Alright everybody, it is a crappy day out, so I figured I'd make a video. I'm going to give you a complete overview, front to back, and show you what this twin-powered AtomRC Dolphin running on 6S is all about. I'll go through all the parts, all my 3D printed stuff. I swear this thing is more plastic than it is foam right now. It's flying great, and I just wanted to share it with y'all. So if you guys like to do this, you can see what I've done and go from there. Let's get started. The video system that I'm using is the DJI O3 Air Unit. It has, it is a complete stock unit, stock camera, stock VTX, stock antenna. It is on a servo. This servo is actually from a company called MotionSick. They make a head tracking setup. So this servo can turn, I can't think of the degrees, I'll put it up, but this allows me to look all the way back. Not straight back, but pretty far back. I just cut a piece of foam out and I just kind of hot glued that servo in there. This right here is just another, this is a mount that I found online on Thingiverse, and I'll share that. This right here is just a TPU lens cover, just to kind of keep this thing from getting scratched up in travel. Works great. This is another TPU mount for the VTX that I found on Thingiverse. And it sits in the VTX actually sits in a tray, and it's going to be kind of hard to see the tray. But this tray I had to take a soldering iron is what I did, and touched it to the foam to dissolve it, to sink that tray in there. And this works absolutely great. Made some more modifications to the foam so I could get the wiring in there, and that thing just sits on there like it should. This is just a little tiny, I think it's just a carbon fiber spar. It is actually from one of my swordfishes that I grenaded. You could use anything. Something that I use a lot are these skewer sticks you get at Walmart or wherever. Stick that in the foam, bada bing, bada boom, and life is good. Just a little bit of duct tape to hold it on. A little bit of an angle just for air resistance, I guess. And then I run my wiring. I use servo extensions, and I pretty much just cut and solder, and I run this all the way back to my flight controller, which sits under there, and we'll see that in a second. The reason I use these servo extensions is this way I can unplug my VTX. So if I have this thing, this right here is for the TX and the RX, and then this one right here is for the power. So I can just kind of, so I'm gonna have this thing sitting on the bench running. I can just unplug my power right there. Keeps this thing from overheating. Other than that, that is the VTX setup on it. Moving down the list here, this is a Beta Super D ELRS receiver with diversity. So it's got two antennas. I just ran those suckers out here to the side. Took a screwdriver, poked a hole, and this is actually sticky tape, and I have them sitting right there, and it works great. I got one on each side right there in the wings. Doesn't really affect anything, I don't think, and it's up here in the front, out of the way, and again, this runs all the way back to the flight controller, which we'll get to in a minute. Because that VTX tray, how it sits in there, and because of my little carbon fiber rod, as you can see, it goes all the way down to the floor. I had to modify the front of my hatch assembly a little bit. Just had to shave that down, cut a notch, and then it goes in there like that. Added this cooling vent, found that on Thingiverse. Just got that thing just pretty much press fitted in a little bit of hot glue. And I took my little hatch thing out of there that you pull up to release it. That's just so my camera there in the back has a better view, and we'll get into that camera here in a little bit. Of course, the battery's sitting in there. This is, let's get this sucker out. This is a 6S battery. This is a ZOHD lithium ion pack, 4,000 milliamp. This is a heavy sucker. And as you can see, I had to thoroughly open up this cavity so that my battery could sit in there. Again, using the soldering iron trick works great. If you look at my other videos, I demonstrate doing that. And not only did I have to, let's see if I can just position that somewhere. There we go. Not only did I have to open it up for the width of that big battery, but I also then had to do another channel so that I could run the wiring and sink the wiring into the side so that it wouldn't chafe and rub up against the battery and cause any issues. And because that battery fits in there so tight, again, that's why we got the vents right there on the side. Moving down, obviously you can see this is a twin motor setup. You can find this kit. Of course, I got videos on it on Thingiverse. The motors that I am using is the F60. These are a 1950 kV, and these are the Gemfan, what are we got? 6x42 props. Regular rotation and a counter rotation on the other side. What isn't included in the Thingiverse link on this gentleman's page is, we'll get to the underside of this, are these little ESC holders. This is a very simple, let's see if I have one here. I do. You can find this on my Thingiverse, and the links will be down below. This just sits on there, gets hot glued, and that way I can keep the ESCs there so they get plenty of airflow. And then I just run the wiring back to the wings. I had to cut a little channel here, but no big deal. Turn this thing back over. These wingtips here are not just to look cool, they are out of necessities. I landed in some grass and it just tore into it for whatever reason. And so I found these online, printed them off. I got a video on these winglets, and they're just hot glued on there. Don't use E6000. I try to avoid it at all costs because eventually these things break. I print them very light so that everything's as lightweight as possible. And if I used E6000, that's pretty much it, one go. With hot glue, I can just take my X-Acto knife and I can trim the old ones off and put new ones on. And I've gone through a couple of these so far. Moving here to the top again, with this thing being a twin tractor and 6S, my flight controller, which will open this bay up so you can see, was getting pretty hot sitting there with all that horsepower running through there. So I put these vents in to help mitigate some of that heat, and it works great. Actually made a big difference, believe it or not. Moving further back, we got my thumb cam. This is the cheapo one. They don't make it anymore. Didn't want super lightweight. It actually runs off the, it doesn't have a battery. It runs on the, off the flight controller, off a spare UART. I found this little holder for it online. That's TPU as well. This I actually had. This is for my dirt bike helmet. And they don't make this anymore, but I'm sure there are 1,000 different mounts you can make. It's just something that I had, I used, and I colored it with a permanent marker. So, yeehaw, do what you gotta do. Moving to the back, one of the most essential parts about the original AtomRC Dolphin was their janky motor mount setup. So, this is my motor mount. I have a PLA motor mount holder that's inside there. This is an extender, and this extender gets this motor sitting farther back for CG. Well, because of the weight of that battery, I was gonna have to put weight on the ass end of this thing anyway. So I left this setup because I actually have a spare set of wings that I can unplug this, I can take these wings off, and I can go right back to my original configuration without a problem. So that's why this is left on there. And all I have to do that is I unplug the motors, number one, because they're coming off, and then I just plug this one into there, which is for the motor, and then there's my lead for the communication wire, and I'm good to go because I still have the ESC sitting underneath of it in the factory location too as well, which you'll see in a moment. Now this little guy hanging off the back, since I'm keeping this on there, you can see I got some nicks. With all this weight, with the battery, this thing has to be landed pretty quick. And I'm worried that when I land on the ground, it's gonna come down and it's gonna start, it's gonna hit this end first, especially if I come down ass heavy, like I said before. So I originally took a propeller, and I'll take this as an example. And I took a junkie propeller, which is what this is, and I just kind of trimmed it up just to protect that shaft and keep the nut on there for the threads. Well, it didn't work very well. And so I 3D printed this, and this will be on my Thingiverse as well. This just bolts on there, and it's a little bit taller, so it shouldn't be too much drag. So if I land first, it's gonna hit this and wear on that and keep everything good to go. There is a little hole right there because without that prop on there, normally I hang my planes on the wall. So I drilled a little hole, and as you can see right here, I have a hook that goes through it, and that's just TPU, by the way. And that just hangs right there if I want to hang it on the wall. We'll go ahead and open up this bay here and give you a view in the inside. I relocated everything. I plan on converting this plane to a tail sitter, so I want my flight controller to be as close to the center of gravity as possible, so that way when I do try to make this a tail sitter, I'm giving it the flight controller the best chance to figure out how to balance it instead of being in the back. That's the only reason it's there. If it wasn't a tail sitter, I'd probably move that. I probably would kept it where it's at or moved it up probably just a little bit farther, but whatever. It is what it is. That is why it's there. I moved my GPS right behind it. My GPS used to sit right there, but just kind of make it all in line and look good. This little piece right here, this little angle bracket that I made, and I'll put the link for that up. That just angles the USB connector, as you can see, the data link connector. So when I plug into this thing, I can just be like, and plug in and unplug. Makes life easy, breezy. Beautiful cover girl. This little device right here is for my LEDs. This changes the patterns and the speed. My LED wires come up from here, and it's just a big old mess that I kind of got tucked in right there. And it's just powered off of the LED connector right there. I think that covers pretty much everything up here on the top. I don't think I'm missing anything. Let's flip this plane over and I'll show you the bottom. All right. And again, going to the back, another thing that I did is I took my Dremel and I carved a channel, got a little piece of tape here. So all I have to do, I thought it was a pain in the butt having to run the wires in and then solder it to the ESC right here. I didn't like that. So the ESC that I have right here, which is the same ESC that I have in the front, I just take this cover off and I can just pull everything through, and I can take this whole setup off without having to desolder it. Just makes it nice. Now another thing too, I better grab my screwdriver and show you. All right, and then take this off, and then there you can see I trimmed that, and that way I can pull this whole thing right out, bada bing, bada boom. Which leads me to this. This wood piece right here that comes from the factory, I replaced that because the screws strip out super easy. So I made this little piece of plastic that's on my Thingiverse account. And then of course the ESC cover. And then this right here is an air inlet that I just glue to the bottom of this thing. And the reason I do that is because it kind of doesn't, I'm not really worried about airflow. Air's coming in, air's getting out. As you can see, this just adds as another skid, more protection. If I land in crap or what, I don't know. It just tries to keep this ESC off the ground a little bit. So that is why I do that. And I just hot glue it. I hot glue this to that. It's a wearable item. Pops off sometimes if I hit hard, and that's what it does. Speaking of skids, these are my other skids that I use. I land this thing on the street. I'm telling you, landing on the street, in my opinion, is 1,000 times better than landing in grass or a field. The plane just slides nice and easy. It doesn't get caught on anything. And there's streets everywhere when you can. Now, sometimes you can't. But I prefer to street land. And all I did is I took a razor blade and I just cut the original humps off of there. Just made them flat. Printed these suckers out. These are just some wood. These are just some sheet metal screws. I just kind of screwed them into the foam. Just kind of pretty much held it there so then I could just hot glue around it on both sides. That one's black because I printed it first, and then I got purple PLA. So that's it for that. Wings, these are my ESC covers. Especially if you're just doing the regular rear pusher, these things are a must. These will protect your servo horns and your servos from stripping out. Again, a wearable item. Fantastic, must have them. I had to cut mine. They're normally a rectangle, but to fit the motor mounts. Oh, and these motor mounts, by the way, these are E6000 onto the plane, but I have a whole video on that. These are my LED strips. I had to poke to get the connector. I was just being lazy. I didn't want to desolder the connector and put it back on. So I had to poke a pretty big hole. And instead of filling that hole up with hot glue, in case I ever want to replace these, I just put some electrical tape and then I just kind of hot glued around, so that way I can peel these off if I ever need to replace them as they wear out and get damaged. Going into the flight controller, this is how I have mine set up. UART1 is for my receiver. There's a ton of wiring in here. UART2 and 3 are the telemetry wires for my ESCs. So motor 1, motor 2. The telemetry allows me to have engine RPM and motor RPM and ESC temperature. UART number 4 is the power negative for the run cam. And again, the LED's plugged into the LED one. I have my pan servo. It is on this last one right here. I don't know which one that is. I can't read it right now. And then of course the ailerons and the wings, just how they come from the ailerons and the ESC communication wires, just how they come from AtomRC. I'm running INAV 7.1 right now. And I'm running 7.1 because I want that tail sitter. I'm trying to figure it out. There'll be a whole video on that once it happens. These latches up here, these are from Painless 360. I took them and I sized them up in Cura. I scaled them bigger just to make them a little bit easier to use. And then I take these are just sheet metal screws, and I'll put a dab of hot glue in there, and then I'll screw that in real quick. And then that keeps the screws from turning as you're rotating them throughout its life. And these work great. They're added protection. I originally put them in when I had my 360 camera right here because I lost the little nub that holds it in right there, so I had to do something. And that's it, guys. I'll show you the weight of this thing. All right, scale is zeroed out. We'll set her on there. And without the battery, it is 927 grams. And this is gonna bring it to about 1,376 grams. So it is a very heavy plane for what it is for the wingspan. You have to fly faster than normal. You have to land faster than normal. But I love this better than the original setup. And honestly, I might order another Dolphin and just mess around with the and just make it another rear pusher or 6S for us. I don't know, but I love this thing the way it is. I love having the power on demand. I can do whatever I want to. You're gonna see some videos. I'm gonna take it to a couple areas, my little track setups that I have, and I'm gonna put this thing through its paces. I think with this big battery here, I think as long as I'm not crazy with it, I think I can get 25 minutes. Shouldn't be an issue. But we will do an endurance test. I have new goggles coming. I have some DJI goggles 2, so I can record my OSD. We're gonna see what kind of top speed this thing can do next as well. And I think that covers it. If you can't find links to my stuff and you checked, just post up a comment, some stuff I might miss. And I think that covers it, guys. We'll see you on the next video. See ya. Bye.